accent. So here we go. She's in England.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, we're getting in here. Hey, we've made it live to the internet safely with all of our sanity and marbles intact.
Almost.
Yeah, most of it, right? All right, welcome everybody to today's Eat and Greet, where hopefully in the next hour-ish, we're going to give you something that is absolutely worth the time you took to show up today. And I'm super pumped today to have Michael Bartlett over, because I just love this topic, and you wrote a book, and you're in it with the Maverick planet, and what a cool perspective, I think, to be able to bring to the table. So I'm like getting way ahead of myself because we haven't even had the talk yet, but welcome.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. We're real honored to be here and to talk with you on a beautiful day. And thanks everyone for joining us. You know, there's a lot of things you could be doing right now, and thanks for spending time with us.
Yeah, I know, it's so neat. I mean, these have really kind of caught a little bit of fire, and people come consistently and bring their lunch or their snack or their attention, and it is very, very exciting. So little housekeeping before we get in here, you guys. I'm going to put it down in the chat, and I'll make sure it's in the description box down below. But now you can go to the home page of my website and see the calendar, so you can see who's coming and when, and all of the cool events that are coming through 2021, and I'll be updating through 2022 as well. We're moving that quickly along. So now you can go find out exactly when and where to park yourself right here, and I look forward to seeing you on all of those events. As well, as always, I will make sure that all of Michael's information is in the description box down below as well. So Michael, I ask everybody, I ask when you get in the saddle, how in the world did you get into astrology? We all landed on the astrology island, but how'd you get here?
Well, I was first of all, I was kind of lucky in a sense because I grew up in California and I went to college at UC Santa Cruz. So I had my first reading when I was 18 in Santa Cruz, and I think it kind of helped probably put a seed in my head. But it wasn't really until the Y2K 2000 I moved to, actually in 1999 I moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and just had a very odd experience. I've always had this, it's kind of ties into the topic. I'm one of those people who can always make things happen and do things and everything. And I moved here to Santa Fe and like wasn't having any luck meeting people, relationship wise, wasn't having any luck finding work. I bought a house, so that wasn't really a problem, but everything else just kind of really fell apart, and I just didn't make any sense of it. So I went and saw an astrologer, and he explained to me, he said, oh, you have Pluto and Chiron on your ascendant. Which at that time I was like, oh, okay, I don't know what that means. Woohoo! Sad's rising. What adventure am I in for now? I just didn't know that then, but it just I came from a psychology background, and the hard part for me with psychology a lot of times is there a pathologizing of people going through cycles. And what I really appreciate about astrology is it shows us that we all go through cycles by transit and by progression in our lives, also with whatever goes on in our natal chart. And so it helped me to, there's nowhere I could have gone to get help going through a Pluto transit to my ascendant from traditional psychology. They would have either said, go see a psychiatrist, and you need to take some anti-anxiety drugs and antidepressant drugs, and shoot yourself up with whatever or self-medicate. But but through astrology, it's like, oh, you know what, I can see that this is something I'm here to start having these parts of myself stripped away that no longer work. This is a natural process that I'm here to experience, not to take a pill and dull out from. So that really kind of helped show me a lot with that. And the astrologer here who taught me, or who did that reading here in Santa Fe, he was also the one who kind of got me on the idea, because he was born with a Saturn on his ascendant. And he explained to me how, and I've seen this countless times, I'm sure you have, with people. I think ascendant points are so incredible because it's the birth moment, right? So usually whenever you see planets around that ascendant point, that's likely some sort of an archetype representing that planet is getting played out in the birth process. Like Neptune on the ascendant, the water broke early, or there was a snowstorm or a rainstorm, or any number of things. So we had Saturn. So it just kind of started with that. And then I have Mars in Virgo on my midheaven. you know, I don't have any fire in my chart as we were talking about earlier, but my Mars and my midheaven kind of makes up for it.
Right? You're like, that's plenty.
I've got it covered. So that kind of helped show me, kind of give me the inklings of the understanding of the importance of angles and what they mean. And that's kind of what led into the book. And we'll, you know, get into that in a second too, of course.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I just love that you have a book, right? It's like, it hits you and you got to write a book, but it's amazing when it comes that way, right? Because I have now, so 3 books. And I remember the first one that I did trying to sit down and write a book. And it is the book that I will probably never ask anybody to buy. And then 2 other books that were like, oh, I think I'm supposed to talk about this. And it's a completely different experience. Yeah.
It's like, I mean, anyone who's written them, and I've never had kids, so I don't know this, but people say it's a lot like having a kid. And I think it really is, because it's, you know, you put it out there, it gets out there maybe too quickly. It needs some editing. That's what we're doing now on it. But yeah, it's a process, isn't it? And it's such a moving target on like what our interest is in any moment, and also what astrologically is going on and what other people are interested in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of it's a big space out here. I'll say the astrology island is vast. That's for
And the
sure.
topics are amazing. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I did a little bit of a PowerPoint thing that I can kind of go through and kind of break down some of it if people want. You know, sometimes the visuals kind of fun. They don't have to worry about staring at us the whole time.
Yeah, and we love slides over
See,
here. So feel free to screen share when you're ready. And we're in the saddle. We're ready.
Perfect. Screen share. Let's see.
And I see everybody coming into the chat. It's so good to see you guys today, and hopefully you have your snacks. I have French fries today. I made homemade French fries for our event today.
Oh, that's, you're so, see, I was gonna bring some food or make some food, and I thought, you know, I talk too quickly anyway, and it's just really not that pretty. But I do have homemade ginger beer. One of the joys of the pandemic this year was making ginger beer. So I'm sipping on ginger beer while I talk. So that's my eat part of my eat and greet.
We support your effort. We support your quarantine pandemic efforts.
So you know, I guess first of all, it's like, you know, what is a maverick, right? You know, we hear this word kind of thrown around a lot. It used to, I know when I was a kid growing up, and I mean, you grew out here in the West as well, you know, we'd hear maverick is something like, you know, cattle person, you know, someone out there kind of like, you know, I'm out here making a difference, you know, but the truth is, it's someone who just kind of does something very differently, right? An unorthodox or an independent minded person. And in this sense of cattle branding, the point was to not brand, you know, the point was to brand the cattle so people knew who owned what. And there was a gentleman named Maverick who actually decided, oh, well, if everyone else is branding their cattle, I don't have to brand my cattle, right?
Makes sense. He's like, take one step out.
Yeah, he's like, I'm fine with letting go of that expense of you know, having all the people cash them and, you know, brand them and everything. But the idea is too, is that once, you know, so the idea is if a calf isn't branded, that whoever comes along and finds it is the owner if they brand it first. So that's kind of the risk you run, you know, of losing your cattle. And here, you know, Gordon Dixon was entitled to Maverick. I like this quote. It really seems right. Every society has a few mavericks. You can tell us by our distinguishing marks if you know what to look for. For one thing, we refuse to live by the herd rules, so we're forced to make up our own rules instead and then live by them.
Mm.
I know you don't resonate with that.
No, not at all. What do you mean? Actually, I was just thinking as you were just saying it out loud, just how much that is resonating right now today. Like, oh, I'm almost getting teary. So it must be time for this talk.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny, like I say a little bit later on, but I think as astrologers, we're theme finders and cheerleaders, right? We're like here to like reflect back. I think everyone's chart is just this beautiful gift. Some astrologers sit there and go like, oh, you know, you have so many squares, you know, so many oppositions, you know, you have a quote bad chart. Like, I would never tell a person they have a bad chart. That's like telling that person they're bad themselves. You know, you're a divine expression of the universe in that moment and here to express that. So how do you want to express that?
Right? Absolutely. The planets were fated in their configuration that you get to choose.
And your soul is like, hey, you know what? I could really use Mars in this position and Jupiter in that position and Neptune over here to get what I need to get done.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what our experience is. So what I find is that, for what I'm calling a maverick is when a planet is conjunct an angle. So an angle is the ascendant, the descendant, the IC, and the MC. And it gives a really super highly realized presentation of the planet. And it often acts like, I know you're really familiar with Tony Howard's work with, out of bounds planets. They can act like an out of bounds planet. They can act like a feral orphan or a singleton, meaning they're not in relationship to anything else because they're just very hyper realized. I don't know, it's like sometimes still kind of experience it. They talk about, we don't know who discovered water, but it probably wasn't fish. The truth is all of us who have these planets on the angles operate in this way, drive a lot of people around us crazy, but are almost kind of completely unaware that we operate this way because it's just fundamentally our operating system.
Yes.
It's almost like a streamline. I love my friend Fred Steinman out in New York City. He said, it's kind of like nailing the planet to the cross.
Wow.
Really just like, like when a planet stations to retrograde or direct, there's that same thing. It's like the needle is on the record and it's just sitting there and it's digging and it's digging and it's digging. It's like, you can't help but notice that it's there.
Well, I can tell you, like the vibration of a maverick planet, I think is interesting that you talked about, like, we don't always know. Like you have it, you don't always know that you're kind of putting that little transit on another human being, right? Because it's like, oh, it's just doing what it's meant to do.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really cool vibe.
Yeah, it's really fun. So a person who has a planet on any of the angles is going to be a person I see who's being under the tutelage, direction, mentorship of the planet. It's likely clearly obvious to everyone around them, but not to the native, him or herself. One of the things that came to me with this was with my Mars in the midheaven was I met an astrologer and we started talking about this, and he's like, well, look at all the red. You have your red in your skin. It shows up a lot. I flush really easily. It's like, it's almost like we're kissed by that planet. It's really kind of interesting. You have Chiron there, right? So, here you are giving people the practical tools of going about doing their lives to heal them, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One of many aspects of how you do that.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of different reasons why I did it. One is to provide a range of expression with each planet and sign further defined by each of the angles. If you notice most astrology books, you pick it up and it's basically Aries to Pisces, right? Mm-hmm. And they use that as a repeat again when they go over the houses or the sun. They do it as kind of a refunneling of it. So what this is each planet, each sign on each of the angles.
Ooh.
532 opportunities here. And I think what's really nice about it, I was a psych major in college, and one of the things that actually didn't make me fall asleep in psych class were reading the case studies. And so the book is full of examples. My theory in a sense was that anyone who has a planet conjunct the angle, we should know about them or know of them, for that archetypal reason. And it really shouldn't need too much of an explanation, but as a way to show the range, like as Richard Tarnas calls it, the multivalent properties of the archetypes. That's what really, I think, gets shown off really well in this book, because it's done through quotes, it's done through parts from people's obituaries. It might have been movie parts they've played or acted, songs they've sung. It's really interesting. I mean, as we know, it's just, we can't help but express our archetypal charts all the time. I also think it's really important. One of the things I think is very interesting is, we talk a lot about the ascendant and the midheaven, but we kind of talk about the descendant a little bit because it has to do with relationships, but kind of like the lost stepchild in a way is the IC, right? No one really wants to talk about, that's that thing down there at the bottom, no one wants to really talk about it, but the amazing thing that I found on each and every single time is it didn't matter if it was on the MC, the IC, the AS, or the DS, it just really showed up. Like as an example, oh my gosh, it's either, I think it's Jupiter in Virgo at the IC, Gene Roddenberry, the writer for Star Trek, going off into distant and different worlds. Well, of course, that's the best place to do it, down your IC, right?
Wow. That's
really fun.
No,
So my point is really, and it's funny because it's also fairly common, we're, I'd say that in the population, we're looking at probably anywhere from, gosh, 40 to 70% of the population are likely to have some sort of a planet on the angle. And if not a planet, then either maybe an important point or an asteroid. So my thing is really about encouraging people to like look in here and go to whether they have a planet on the angle or whether they even just have a planet in that same sign as their angle. Say like, for example, you have Taurus as your midheaven, like, well, what do your other planets, what are other people doing with those planets in that sign on those angles? What are other people doing? And just seeing like, oh, well, that's really interesting. They're like, oh, no wonder why I have an affinity with that person. Because that's the other thing you're going to see is if you have any of these and you read about it, you're going to be like, oh, no wonder why whenever I turn on the TV, that person's on or something. Because,
right.
we flock together, which is another one of the reasons.
Yeah. Can I ask you something really quick?
Yes, please. Yeah.
When you're looking at the planet on the angle, what is the what orb value are you working with?
So yeah, I cover that in here too, but I'm happy to no, it's fine. I think it's fun because then it'll be nice to just kind of go through it because it's easier than just doing it. I have to say that I typically like to work with, my intention was to work with a 5-degree orb, applying and separating. My calculations end up being a little bit off and some of them actually are 10. But the interesting thing is I'm seeing it when there's even just the same planet in the same sign with your angle.
Okay.
So, and I think the more sensitive a person is, the more that one is aware of that's what that energy is. I think they can, I think we can corral it and use it.
Okay.
So it's a really wonderful thing because, the truth is like when I say that, most of the time we see as a planet's applying, there's usually a lot more pressure. And then as soon as you see like right after that, sorry, my mind just went, when the separating, usually a degree afterwards, the energy kind of drops off. I don't see that with this.
Sure.
So
Sure.
I just kind of, that's kind of like for me, I just kind of go by what's getting presented. And, the famous people are showing up really expressing these energies, even sometimes when it's like a really wide margin. I'm kind of like, sometimes I go like, oh, I don't want to be doing sloppy science in a way of reporting it, but I also want to keep it fluid enough so that people are seeing, that it obviously affects us.
Sure.
So I said this already, the expressions 48 expressions per planet, not just the natural 12. And then we can see how many planets act when in the same sign as angle, not necessarily conjunct, like what we just discussed.
Okay.
So what I did is I actually just, you might appreciate this for mapping out the book. At first, I didn't even think about what it was that I was tackling. So I thought, oh, okay, well, I'm going to just simply go into Word and I'm going to do Sun, on the, Sun, Aries, and all the way into Pisces on the ascendant. Okay, I did that one. Then I did the thing for, on the IC, then the descendant in the midheaven. And then I went into, well, actually, this is kind of a fun slide anyway, so I'll go. So that's, the first book is only the first 7 planets. It goes up to Saturn. And I'm just actually finishing Pluto now. So I'm actually getting the work almost done with the second book. The first book's in getting edited. The second one's is going to be edited soon. And then the question will be, should I try and sell like a 700, 800 page book all together as one or do it in 2 parts? I don't know.
Oh my God.
So that first book has 336 parts in its table of contents with anywhere from 2 to 12 examples each, provided, of course, well, actually for all of those, we don't have any problems. It's when we get into the outer planets, we don't have the as many examples, Pluto in certain signs, Pluto takes 240 years to go around. So before 1940, not a lot of people had their birth time caught. And the key thing with these angles is you really have to know the birth time for a person.
Okay. All right.
So that's really kind of the caveat. So yeah, that's the first book, has the first 7, and then the second one, I'm including Chiron. I'm sorry, I haven't, people, it's funny, as I'm doing this each time I give a talk, like, oh, well, what about Eris? And what about this? And what about that? And I'm like, I wish I could sit down at my computer and just do nothing but research. Actually, I don't. I need to live a life, but it's like, I really welcome people, this is really just a step off. I never really thought, I started laying this thing out and I was like, and then I went into Solar Fire and they have a search engine thing where you can put in if then statements. So I said, if the person has ascendant in Aries, and then they also have to have a sun in Aries, so each thing has to kind of do it together, and then it pulls up a thing. So then I listed all of those, and then I started one by one going through and doing the research on each individual on the internet. So some sections will take me 15, 20 minutes because it's really easy, and some will kind of take me days. Like I have to admit, I just got that. The Pluto and Leo ones are like,
abundant.
so many, they've left such a great mark, right? Like Bronson and I have some great examples. So I'll just shut up right now. So totally, when it's completely done, it'll have 528 positions with anywhere from 2 to 12 examples each, except for, of course, those outer planet ones where I don't have any examples.
So there's literature available.
Yeah, and the cool, what my goal is here is really to like encourage people like this. I see it as a research book. I didn't see it first like that. It was funny because I was talking to a friend of mine, Nuno Michaels from Portugal, before I started doing this, and I explained to him, and he just like looked at me really shocked all of us, and he says, "Do you know what you're doing?" He said, "That's going to be such a great resource for astrologers." Because when you're working with a client and you're kind of like stuck on what that might mean, you can go in here and go, oh, so-and-so has that. And there's nothing better to tell a client that, wow, you have this trait just like Oprah or just like Caitlyn Jenner or, whatever it is that you kind of feel this within yourself, but you're not sure how it is. And that to me is like that reflecting back, like, well, look what this person did with it.
Mm-hmm. And it kind of, I think, sometimes can help people visualize how to manifest that or how to engage that a little bit, because we're really, a lot of us, very good at like physical examples. Yeah.
I think so too. And I mean, I think because the harder part too, and I think one of the senses I at least this is a sense I've had. I mean, I'm just I only have one planet on the angle. I mean, some of these people, I mean, every angle's covered, or they might have a stellium all wrapped around it or something. I just think that has got to be so challenging for a child. I mean, my energy is hard enough on people now. When I was a kid, but if someone had been able to say, hey, Michael, you have a Maverick Mars and, you're a busybody, you need tasks, you need to be working on things, you need to be thinking about how things fit together and how they work and all the pieces work together. Some ways I got that, in other ways I didn't. But in this kind of sense, it could be really helpful for parents, like knowing how to deal, because like, how does a parent deal with that? I'm a Scorpio moon too, as you know, and that's the other thing I think, like, how do parents deal with that? I think astrology is really great for parents. Have you had Alex Trenowith on yet?
She's coming in January.
Oh God, I love her and her work on children. Oh, so great, because to have the context to be able to have, I mean, how many of us, we've worked our butts off to get to where we are and what our knowledge and awareness is. But if when we were kids, someone had been able to be called in to help our parents understand what they had on their hands,
Woo!
Right? Yeah, right, you got goosebumps too, didn't you?
Absolutely. I mean, because like, what was it? Like Spock for a long time. That was like the best we kind of had in the and it's like, yeah, okay, everybody poops, but meanwhile, at a soul evolutionary level, you've got a child who has a nature that is vastly different than yours, and you are still built to be helpful to that.
Yeah, right.
That's a game changer.
Right. And part of that too is also our soul's evolution and becoming who we need to be in the absence of being seen in that, right? I mean, that's the other complex aspect to it, is like, if we were given all that, maybe we wouldn't be challenged enough in the ways that we need to. I mean, those of us with Scorpio and Taurus planets know that, a lot of life is just kind of going through some very uncomfortable times and learning really deep lessons from them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we all agreed to do it. So here we are.
Amen. So just in case people are wondering what the crosses look like, they are these four. When you look at a chart, this is basically set up. Everyone's ascendant starts at a different point in a different sign, depending on where you were born and what time you were born and what day you were born. But basically what you can consider the ascendant is that sign that is rising on the eastern horizon at the moment you take breath. When we move from this moment, and this is, what I started talking about earlier on, that the ascendant being such a crucial point, this moving from the 12th house into the first house is us incarnating. It's us coming from spirit and in coming into the physical body and taking that first breath separate from our mom, when the umbilical cord is cut and we're either slapped or whatever, and we start crying because we realize, oh, it's cold out here and bright.
Not what I was used to.
Yeah, I liked it a little better where it was warm and dark. So if we look at each of the angles, I mean, these angles are really all about our angles of relationship with the world. So if we look at our ascendant, it's the face of and for ourself. I like to think of it as the greenhouse effect. If you're in a greenhouse that has a certain colored glass to it, say it's blue, if you're inside that building and you look outside, everything's going to appear blue. Everyone outside looking in to see you, it's going to be blue. So whatever your sign is on your ascendant, I mean, we all talk about sun signs, and everyone's really popular about that in the media and horoscopes. But the truth is that our ascendant is really what people encounter in most of the time, and most of the time, how we're operating with the world as well. The IC, I like to see it, down here at the bottom of the chart, is like, I think of like that place where we go when we're home alone. It's our private place. It's where we get to be who we are. It's our inner family. It also can be our biological family. So a lot of times when people have planets around the IC, and the fourth house, you typically see those being played out in the family dynamics as well. The descendant, or DS, is that point where how we are in relationship to other. I've got to shut this door over here. I'm sorry, 1 second.
That's okay. All right, you guys, while he is doing that, I just put my little request in the chat box. Please, 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 if you are watching, go ahead and like the live that we're doing so far. And if you haven't already, make sure that you have clicked the notification bell next to the subscribe button. So that way when an upload comes or we start a live, you are informed immediately. Okay.
Perfect. And so the difference with the ascendant to the descendant is this is like our relationship, who we are in relationship to other, the face that we show others and that we want others to see. It's different from how it is over here. This is more like how we're operating, this like our operating system, our DOS or our Windows version, so to speak. But this is like, who we are in relation to other people. And then the MC is like, the face of and for the public. Who are we out in the public world? What are we describing ourselves to be? What's our career path in life, sort of thing. So anytime planets are, really close within that moment, within 5 to 10 degrees of the angles, that's the place we're talking about in the chart. I personally do whole sign houses. It just makes these points sensitive points within each of the first, fourth, seventh, and 10th. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean 10th house. Actually, the fourth could be any one between the third and the fifth house, depending on where you are in the world, how far north and how far south you are. But I just like whole sign houses because it just keeps it simple. And they say it's more original what they are. So houses don't define the angles. That's a real thing I get over and over again with people. They start going into topics about the house. This book has nothing to do with the houses. This book is all about the angles.
Yeah.
Very different clarification.
It's its own live and vibrating thing.
And I can't tell you how many astrologers I've actually gotten in conversations about, and they're confused by what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're demystifying as we go.
Exactly. But, with some of the house systems, the angles do define the houses, like with Placidus and Koch, and actually a lot of them do have that, like where the ascendant is the starting point of the first house. Mm-hmm. Personally, I'm kind of like Robert Hand and, Project Hindsight and more the traditionalist in the sense of, my sense is that, if you think about the sign being a room, or any of us who have a planet in any of our signs, as soon as any other planet by transit moves into that first degree of that sign or steps into that sign, we feel it. And so for me, I can't, right there, because then it's like you're building a room inside of a room, and then it gives people, I hear people say excuses like, oh, well, it's what do they call it? Intercepted, and I can't get to it. And I'm like, that feels like it's a way for you not to be present with yourself.
Yeah, which is interesting because I use Placidus, but I also have the same idea that the angles are still their own angles. So I know that I'm probably going to be burned at the stake, but I think the angles are their own angles. And I do absolutely believe when it comes into a new sign, that's it. It strums the chord of that sign energy. So we're going to feel it. There will be note taken for sure. And then you can wait for more direct impact.
That's beautiful. I like that. I like how you use it. It's like a wave, whether it's sound or whether it's light, but yeah, it's definitely like, there's an awareness that happens when that. So yeah. Thank you. I'm glad I figured you would know that. Like I said, this represents a sensitive point. So, and they remain constant. From what I've seen, the angles remain constant regardless of what house system one uses. I've never seen the angles change. If someone can let me know what that is, I'd really appreciate it. But so far, no one's told me differently.
Sure.
All right. I said that already. So why don't we get to, I'm going to get to some examples because I think we already talked about that.
Yeah. The only thing I think we love more than pictures is examples.
Yep. Well, and okay, so this is another thing that tied in for those of us who have sort of a little bit of a scientific or I don't know, analytical mind in that kind of sense. One of the things many of us have heard about is Michel Gauguin's work, right? The Mars effect. And the idea was that, he went and did a lot more examples than I did. I think there were 25,000 European professionals listed in here. And he went and he laid it, but he didn't do it as like on the point. He did it as far as, he just called them as like angular houses, angularity, meaning that when they fell into these certain areas, like right here above the 12th house, just before the 10th house, right after the 4th, that there is a way in which these just present themselves. And he did it on Mars specifically and showed that it was, especially with athletes and, people who tend to be aggressive in the ways about going about things. And of course, with my Mars there, that went ding.
Like, oh, well, I like all of that.
Exactly. So what I love is like, of course, what does this man have? So, here you might get a little bit of an idea of this. So he has Jupiter conjunct his midheaven in Taurus.
Yeah.
He also has Mercury in exact opposition in Scorpio.
I support a Mercury opposition.
Right? Otherwise, how are we gonna talk about it, right?
Yeah.
And what his wife said is he was something of a medieval tyrant, not easy to live with.
I believe it, man. When you get a stimulated Mercury, it's crazy how busy these people are. They're just busy bees. And I mean, I God bless my husband because I've got that opposition of Mercury and Uranus. And I just think, I pray for you, sir.
I haven't tried, and I mean, yeah, I feel sorry for anyone else around us. It's like, can you slow down a little bit? I'm like, no.
Yeah, it's very busy. So I imagine her experience of him
right
was like a lot.
But also, and then he's also got the Chiron there too. But also, I would think in that, him coming from, he's born in 1928, that white male straight privilege, right? Like the demand, plus having this energy here in Taurus, like, no, I am the king.
Right. I'm it. Yeah. Wow. What a cool example.
Right? All these are so much fun. So what happens when a planet's found the angle? I put a parent in quotes because people think that we're arrogant. I think it's just we're just being ourselves.
Sure. A true expression of the intensity of that vibration against whatever you're doing, right?
Yeah. Being.
Mm-hmm.
Supercharged archetypal planetary expression clothed in the sign. It's kind of like, it's really about the planet, but then it has that wonderful nuance of the way the sign fills it out. And again, like I said before, gives them an edge, but the person doesn't usually feel it. And this is one of the things I like. Whenever I've done talks in this, I'll ask people, it's like, so how many of you guys have planet on the angle? And they'll raise their hand. I'm like, okay, so how many of you know what the rules are and do what you want? And all of them raise their hand.
Every time.
Right?
Every time.
But it's not, it's again, it's like, it's not about, I think there's a strong awareness about what the rules are, especially for, some signs more than others, of course, and some planets more than others, Saturn, say Uranus or Mercury maybe, but the bottom line is, I think there's an awareness, but it's like this thing of like not having to be bound. This is that idea of this branding, this binding to things. There's this freedom that happens with these Maverick planets. And the thing that I started realizing, because I thought, I always thought it was my Scorpio moon, why people would say like, oh, you're so intense, all the time. That's what they always say to anyone with Scorpio, right? But then I thought, well, it might be because of my Mars. But then I thought, well, who are the people I get along best with? And you know what I found out? The people I get along best with, there are other people who have planets on the angles as well.
Sure.
Because I think there's a way that we all kind of know that we're being ourselves, and it isn't, what's the right way to say it? No one's not one is not as likely to be intimidated by someone if you have that kind of a placement, I think. Yeah. Otherwise, I think there's a feeling of maybe being bowled over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's, one of those big life lessons that truly in how I do life, I had to find people who could understand how I did life and how they did, so that it wasn't that feeling of, because what happens is it's like, oh, you're bossy. Oh, you're a busybody. Oh, you're this. But then you put me in the tribe of people who are all bossy busybodies and we just look really productive. So it's like having those people who understand that, yeah, great ideas come to me at 2 a.m. and I want to talk about it. And they're on that same wavelength. And that's a different kind of connection.
That is so, I mean, for the work you do and how you handle it and everything, you've learned that over time. And so many of us, I think, take so long I think we're so raised with this idea like, oh, I have to love everyone. I have to be friendly with everyone, all this kind of stuff. But you know what? We're not for everyone, and not everyone is for us, whether you're a Maverick or not. And what I like with astrology, again, is sometimes when you get the charts up, you can kind of see like, oh, I know why we don't get along.
Like, okay, well, now we've entered the place where I'm going to be a respectful, courteous human being and also not hang out here for a long time.
Right. Yeah. That's the thing, is I think learning, to be around people. I think that's probably been the hardest thing for me to learn over time, and the longest is like, I'd rather be around fewer people who are really awesome than a lot of mediocre people that make me feel bad.
Yeah. Yep.
I know you're that way. And this is really always, this is like so fascinating. We're gonna have some of these examples too. So, when you look at a chart, you never know what kind of consciousness is involved in it. First of all, you don't know whether it's an animal, a piece of furniture, an object, or a person being born. But what I like within this is what I can see is one of the real crucial parts about working with, appreciating, and reflecting back to children who have these kind of placements is so that they learn that they are okay and they don't become people who disconnect from themselves and dissociate and then start harming people. Mm-hmm. Because what I'm going to be showing you is there are a lot of examples, and I can see, with this kind of, this is alchemy, right? In a sense, these people, people born with these kind of placements, there's an inherent alchemy in them. And just because, people can make magic happen on different levels. This is why I thought Bill Duvendek would be a good one for you to interview. And if Bill's out there, hi, Bill. Because, the consciousness of one casting things really has a lot to do with things. The consciousness of someone bringing things into their life has something to do with it. If you're not being led along properly enough, one of my favorite examples, what if Hitler had been able to go to art school? What if he had a couple of teachers who said, wow, you know what, I can see where you're working hard, and these are the things that we can do to help make it better. What would it have been like for him to have had his creativity reflected back to him? Mm-hmm. Yeah. How many people might be alive today? How many people might not have had to suffer?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like why I go with it.
Wild, huh?
Yeah, I said before, how many people in the population, and you know, how do we let this become a healthy, productive way of leading the energy out? It's really crucial. I love this line. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules. They have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. But one thing you can't do is ignore them because they change things. They invent, they imagine, they heal, they explore, they create, they inspire. They push the human race forward. We're in that period right now, people. They may have to be crazy. And while we see them as crazy ones, we also see genius, right? Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are usually the ones who can.
Yeah.
John
Wow.
Chapman. And I think that's, you know, I get goosebumps every time I read this because that's, you know, that's why we're here. Especially now at this time. I mean, the world needs people to not see things in the ways it's gone on before, because the world is not the way it's gone on before.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about origin. I'm not going to talk about
Time to Maverick.
Yeah, exactly. Time to Maverick. Maverick superpower is connected.
Like Captain Planet. Yeah, Captain Planet with our powers combined.
Exactly. So here we're going into some more examples. Because in the end, you won't remember the times you spent working in the office or mowing your lawn. Climb that goddamn mountain.
Climb it. Climb it.
Live, travel, adventure, bless, and don't be sorry. Mars and Sagittarius on the IC. That poor guy, Jack, you know, everyone wanted a piece of him, right? Men wanted a piece of him, women wanted a piece of him, and all he wanted to do is just be left alone and just be enjoying the majesty of the world. Mars and, you know, leave me alone and let me chase off my own adventures, right?
And that was not it.
Practice kindness all day to everybody, and you will realize you're already in heaven now. Joan Quigley was Nancy Reagan's astrologer, who, you know, back in the day when, you know, people didn't really talk about this all too much. So she would, she had, what was hers was, oh, it didn't have it. I think she's, oh, it's up here in the corner. I can't see this cover. Oh yeah, Mercury conjunct her descendant in Pisces.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know about you. Whenever I see Mercury in Pisces, I know I'm dealing with someone who's connected and hears the voices.
Yeah.
Hopefully the good ones. This beautiful man. With Mars here as well, how could Malcolm X not want to protect his family and his clan, which is the African American people? He also has the moon and Chiron conjunct his IC in Aries.
Oh, wow. I think I remember that. You know, I've seen his chart example several times, but you know, you get enough of them in there and you kind of forget.
Right, exactly.
Oh, wow. Moon and Chiron.
Yeah. So he had 4 planets on 2 angles. He couldn't shut up. No, I mean, you know, and look at what, and it's still unfolding. And I love this picture of him. Wonderful. And then the other thing is, it always cracks me up sometimes, is just the way the names work out. Da-na-na-na, da-na-na. So why can't you catch this? Because he has Sun in Aries in the midheaven, MC Hammer. That's his damn name.
That's fabulous. That is fabulous.
Isn't that great? I love it. Lee Iacocca, he has Chiron on his ascendant in Aries. And he caught scarlet fever when he was a child, and so was unable to go in the military. And that's why he became who he became.
Wow. I just love that Chiron has run off.
Wow. This one, just like this whole troop, every single one of the Manson family are Mavericks.
Yeah.
Every single
It
one of them,
doesn't surprise me, right?
right?
Like there's this, I think sometimes this idea in the metaphysical spaces that the only charts that we look at are the ones of people who were nice or who have built a business. And I'm like, no, 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 man, we're over here looking at the depths of, you know, the far sides of humanity as well, to see some makeups that they have. And it's interesting because good, bad, or indifferent, a maverick's a maverick,
Exactly. Yeah,
right?
that's
And that's
really, yeah. I mean,
weird.
that's really, I mean, when you think about it, I mean, we're all a sort of prism, like a clear prism in a sense, right? Where these planets are coming through with their colors, but we're getting to choose how we're kind of rearranging our cloudiness or not to allow that color to come through cleanly or not. And it's just simply, it's just going through, like you say, it can't, it's not, it doesn't have a negative or a positive, it just simply is.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So here's Manson with Jupiter and Mercury and Scorpio on his descendant. I mean, if that isn't the pipe, I mean, that to me is the Pied Piper. You know, I call it the panty dropper or jockstrap dropper, but it's like one of those ones where, you know, this is Rasputin, right? You know, a person with, you know, especially with Jupiter there too. I mean, these people can talk anyone into anything. And
Right.
mm, mm, mm,
Right.
mm. And then Pisces, Pluto and Cancer on the IC.
Wow.
So another aspect of incredible, that can also be incredibly manipulative.
Wow. But it's also, I mean, he was going to always go form family,
Exactly. Yeah.
whatever that was
Right.
going to look like.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. He transformed the idea of what family was, right? I mean, that right there is like a key thing right there. Pluto, Cancer, IC, transforming, you know, our idea of what family is. So Susan Atkins, Chiron and Scorpio in her midheaven, Patricia Krenwinkel, Chiron and Scorpio on the ascendant, Leslie Van Houten has Saturn and Virgo on the ascendant. Surprised that she fell for that.
Right. I'm
You
like,
should have known better.
I would love to see the rest of this. Right.
Yeah. And then the other guy, Atkins, he has a Pluto, I think he's Pluto and Cancer on the IC, just like Charles Manson. Tex Atkin, Charles Tex Atkin, I think his name is. Well, no. Oh. Chiron and Aquarius on the descendant taught us what it was like to see art in a new way, to see other in a new way, and was quite the AIDS activist, Keith Haring.
Wow. I like the picture.
I know, I thought you'd like that. It's so dynamic. Now here, these are the fun ones. I love these. So same placement, opposite expression. So the one on the right, for you young uns out there, this is Richard Carpenter of the Carpenters. And on the left is the infamous Ted Bundy. So Richard Carpenter was the one who wrote the songs that his sister typically sang, and he sang too. But at these, this is Scorpio that we're going to be talking about. I'm just going to prelude on, but it's so funny when you look at his songs. These are all Scorpio songs. Like, I Won't Last a Day, Without You, Hurting Each Other, Yesterday Once More. Aren't those all Scorpionic sounding?
Yeah. I'll just
Ted, but
the depths of death without you.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I will cease to exist if you're not here. It was so 70s, right? Love is never having to say you're sorry because you're an alcoholic and I'm codependent.
Mm-hmm.
So Ted Bundy, I mean, who did really horrific things. I don't mean to make light of this part of it because what he did to women were just really horrific. But here's one thing he said: "I'm the most cold-hearted son of a bitch you'll ever meet. We serial killers are your sons, we are your husbands, we are everywhere, and there will be more of your children dead tomorrow.
Ugh.
And I don't think anybody doubts whether I've done some bad things. The question is what, of course, and how, and maybe even most importantly, why."
Wow. Two different expressions of the exact same placements, huh?
Both of them loaded Scorpio.
Yeah, but look at that. Do you think that retrograde plays into that?
You know, I totally think the retrograde, because I think fundamentally what this shows to me, especially because, I mean, this would show to me a communication issue and then issues around understanding femininity and be able to even communicating with women, right?
Sure.
So this thing is like, I mean, he was very in that place. I think he was really, something happened very young, and it just didn't click. And then Michelle Gauguin has that there too. These are all Mercury and Scorpio on the IC. So 3 different expressions of what one can do with that.
Wow.
Whee! Sir Elton John also has that. And I don't know if you've seen the movie Rocket Man.
I haven't seen it.
If you get a chance, it's kind of like it. Sorry?
I do know of it.
Okay. There's this wonderful montage during it. And it's Jupiter and Scorpio, you think of like, okay, well, it's this wonderful montage of basically sex, drugs, rock and roll, and high living. That they do this montage of it, like in the course, basically it was 10 or 15 years of his life, but they cut it down like into 15 seconds of this little kind of thing that they moved through like in a dance movement thing that was really well done. So I highly recommend it. And O.J. Simpson has this placement as well.
So some different expressions then.
Yeah.
Oh, look at all this. Oh, my boyfriend, Hugh.
Leader of the sexual revolution, Uranus in Pisces on the descendant, right? Yeah. Could he help it? He was never going to want to be in relationship in the normal way, right? It was impossible for him.
God bless him, he tried.
Right, I bet he did. And did these people care about the rules? We don't pay taxes. The little people pay taxes. Leona Helmsley, the queen of mean, she was one of the, before Trump, this is Trump's father's generation, by the way.
Okay.
One of his cronies. Madonna, right? Does she care? Like she's even sticking her tongue out here when she's on stage.
Amidst the things that were sticking out on stage.
Yeah, exactly. And then, oh my God, it's so funny. I always want to put his name down because I so blank out on him. This is the guy, McCarthy.
Yeah.
Beware of artists because they mix with all classes of society and therefore the most dangerous. I guess if I were him, I'd probably put astrologers in there too.
I think we fall in there, or at least we did for a time.
Exactly.
We're the hot ticket item again right now, though. So I have to like celebrate our coolness again for the moment.
It's about time, right?
Yeah.
And this one is so wild. I mean, like when I looked at this, I was like, oh my gosh. Bruce Jenner to Caitlyn Jenner, Sun and Scorpio on the ascendant. Wow. Right? Transformation of what others perceive him, her to be, and now how she perceive how the world sees. Right?
Wow.
It's really incredible. Saturn and Gemini on the descendant, you would think of this as being guarding of secrets, right?
I would think, I don't know, anytime I see Gemini, I'm just like, I think you can't not talk.
Julian couldn't help it.
I know Saturn wants to be an adult. And so I think that the way Saturn helps Gemini is it's like, okay, well, we're just going to say serious things then. Okay.
Right.
But yeah. I got to talk.
Yeah. I'm going to be a whistleblower. I mean, that's the thing too. And it's very interesting, I'm excited to see what's going to happen now with Jupiter and Saturn going over into Aquarius, in a few weeks, because I'm hoping that there's some way in which whistleblowers get their appropriate protection, because they're the ones who actually end up saving a lot of people's lives typically. Karen Silkwood, she's in the book. She's a Maverick. She's an example of that, teaching people, trying to bring awareness to the fact of, that it wasn't safe in these nuclear treatment facilities.
Wow.
James Earl Jones, he has Saturn here. I mean, which, oh my God. We had Saturn here, including Saturn and Mercury and Capricorn on his ascendant. What do we know him for? Darth Vader, right?
Yeah, and if it's not Morgan Freeman being God, then it definitely has to be James, right? Like I can only hear both of those voices.
And you know what? It's just so like creepy in a sense too, because when you think about I'm so glad what's going on in our country now because awareness is being brought to it. But it's like, if God in America is black, then white people better get their act together. Sorry, but So I like this. Speech is a very important aspect of being a human. A whisper doesn't cut it. I mean, and this man is proven that time and time again brilliantly. I mean, and so this is an example, like, so, you know, so if you have Mercury in the same sign as Capricorn and your ascendant's there too, you know, maybe you might want to find a way to let your voice out more. Maybe you might want to find a way to speak up. Maybe there's a way that, you know, that you're known for that. Maybe you're already doing radio, who knows? But, you know, these are the kind of things when you look at these are all, these people that are all these examples are all human beings.
Yeah.
We're all human beings. All of our feet are all made of clay.
I wonder what it's like to just talk about chips with him, you know, like just a regular old, I'm going to get some gas, get some chips. Like, is this like a powerful God moment with his voice or what?
I bet you'd never forget it. I mean, same with any of these people. It's, you know, to be honest, I think any of these individuals, any of these Mavericks who if you were to hang out with any of them, you would not walk away without scratching your head and going, wow, on some level. Higher consciousness and lower consciousness expression. Sri Aurobindo, he's an Eastern teacher who talks about ensouled matter. So he talks about the real difficulty is always in ourselves and not in our surroundings. He really believes in taking absolute responsibility for the ego and for the self. And then we have Bernard Carrick, who was a disgraced ex-NYPD commissioner before his legal entanglements.
Oh.
Jupiter and Leo on the ascendant.
Wow.
Right? This kind of can give one a little bit of a God complex.
And you can kind of see it in both ways, just really that different expression of it.
Exactly. And that's what's fun. Again, you know, it's like, oh, do you want to, you know, like, you know, in the Star Wars thing, you know, Luke, do you want to use your powers for good or do you want to use them for bad?
Right.
Jim Carrey. He's so wild. Mercury and Leo on the midheaven. You know, here's another example of, you know, I mean, Uranus and Leo on the midheaven. You know, his face can't sit still. You know, you don't never know what's going to come out of the man. And he's dealing also, you know, I don't know if you've seen like on YouTube, he's got like a whole consciousness thing going on too. So, you know, that Uranus is clearly waking up his ego. The Butcher of Plainfield, Ed Gein. He's the one, you know, who basically the story of Psycho came out about, right? Because he was living with his mama for a long time and things were a little odd. But, you know, he was making people suits.
Oh, well, less of that.
Pluto and Gemini on the ascendant. I don't think I like the way I look today. I'm going to be someone else. Fortunately, there aren't any more people from that time period right now, right? You know, that was a little while ago, and we got a little while before it comes up to it again. But, you know, you can see kind of like how that, you know, because it's, again, it's almost like having Mercury and Scorpio, right? There can be quite a Svengali or quite a, you know, a way to manipulate people energetically. This one's a crack up one. When I saw this the other day, because I'm working on Pluto, you know, where else could you get someone who could be a science fiction writer and come up with his own religion? Right. So what I wrote, this is the actual thing that I pulled. This is what I have in the book. While he started as a science fiction writer, he also founded Scientology. Of course, it's a perfect combo. His ability to access alternate realities gives us an interesting insight into how he wove religion and science fiction into a saleable and manipulative product to those seeking power. Because, you know, one of the things that they do with them is they get those people to talk, and they're recorded and they're sharing all their deep, dark secrets. And then, you know what? Oh, you want to leave our church? Well, it's kind of like what happened with Nexium.
Yeah.
You know, the collateral, like, honey, if you're with someone who like is trying to tell you that they're like having any kind of spiritual belief thing and they need to get collateral on you, then you are not with the right people. Not with the right people. Sorry.
So I mean, like, what kind of place is looking for that? So, but that's a whole other eat and greet.
Yeah, exactly. We could have fun with that one. Yeah. So what do Mavericks do? They model. And doesn't Maverick change the world? Like, as if any of those already, you had any question in your mind? Here's one that you're going to know right off the bat. Mars on the ascendant and Leo, it's another God complex.
Yeah, he's got a super Maverick chart just in general. Just in general. Sun right there with that Uranian energy anyways. This has already turned up his buzz, and then you add anything else in, right? And he's got a couple unaspected planets as well. So it's really a very Maverick high vibe chart.
Yeah, I mean, you can see why it's hard for anyone to rein him in. Why, he doesn't play well with others. I mean, that's another example where astrology helps you go like, oh, I get it.
Right. And if you can get it, it will also change a bit what you're looking at. Because I know that one of the White House photographers was talking about how, with different presidents, what it's like to be in their energy, especially since they're there all day long. And they said he's always moving. He's always just so busy. It's like he's buzzing. And I'm like, yes, that is literally the frequency of his chart, is to buzz and to be. Yeah. Anyway, again, another eat and greet.
No, but it's an example of what exactly how all these energies play out, and it's so nice because you can sit there and you go like, oh, he needs to be given a pill or he needs to be given this, but it's like, no, this is like fundamental stuff that someone needs to be learning how to work with when they're younger, so you can make those connections in a way so you're not burning everyone in your path, because that's what with Leo on the ascendant, it can either warm you or it can burn you.
Yeah. Yeah. Leo right there.
And here's two really wonderful examples for those of you who are worried because you don't have a planet on the angle.
Yeah. Where are theirs? Oh my gosh.
But Jobs has Sun in Pisces on the descendant. That's quite an understanding of connecting with things. I mean, it's with it. It's not conjunct. So sorry, I'm not mean to say it's just in the same place. So and then I wonder too, like I wonder if there were any transits or progressions to their angles at when
Right.
they have these big outreaches. And for those of you who don't have planets on the angles by birth, just know that every single month the moon is going to hit every single one of your angles. So you're going to have 4 hits during the month. Throughout the year, that sun's going to hit it 4 times. Each of the other planets are going to do it by transit and progressions. It is also when planets hit the angles by transit and progressions, those are usually really major change points in your life. So don't worry, you will get to experience it at some point. And when you do, it's a pretty enlivening thing. And work with your astrologer, or work with, if you're working with programs yourself, go and look at when those dates are. Aim for coming out with material, like whether you're writing a book or doing a blog or doing artwork or something, and work with trying to plan towards that, because you'll find that you'll get this extra boost of energy. It's basically like this, like the universe is putting all these planets, like how are pointing at you like a spotlight going, hey, what are
Yeah.
you up to? Look at how fantastic this person is.
Right. It's like the cosmic conspiracy to help you. Right.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, but you get to come down. Like when you have a Maverick planet, you're just gonna be doing that. But
Yeah.
you get to come down and like have that quick production, Yeah.
So let's see. So just, I want to really encourage people to, work with those planets and the angles. Look at, bring up charts to your families and friends or people you look up to, because they probably, have similar things. The book is available. Let's see, I'm going to just zoom up here. It's available online. You can get it for your Kindle. I like doing it through Kindle and Apple, because electronically, then you can actually click in and type in like a certain thing, like a person's name, and it'll pull up all the examples of that. Whereas, the old-fashioned way, you kind of have to look through each one. But it works either way. And otherwise, you can order it through your local bookstore. You just give them this ISBN number and you can order it. It's just, I think it's just, it's so much fun. I'm so surprised that no one has really been talking anything or doing on it. I mean, it's like one of those things that, in astrology, you've probably seen this over time, we all have our little niches or our little areas. And so like, I just kind of look around like, well, what isn't that people aren't paying attention much to? And this is like, oh my God, why aren't people paying it? The angles are so crucial, and you read about it a lot in the older texts, but like our century doesn't talk about them very much.
Yeah. Yeah. But this is the thing, because was your thing to bring out and talk about, right? And I mean,
Yeah.
thank God nobody snatched it, because you wouldn't have got a whole book out of it. So and more to come.
Exactly.
Yay.
So I will unshare and we can go back to you being, dun, dun, dun. Let's see.
So we'll make sure that all of the information to get in contact is in the description box down below. Link to the book. I'll make sure that I put the ISBN number there as well, so that you can just have access to just all the goodnesses that are available to contact and reach out with Michael. And thank you so much for coming. This was awesome. We've been getting to it. We've been waiting for our date.
I know I've been so excited. And it's like when you first contacted me, I was like, oh my God, it's so exciting. And then I was like, then I've been seeing like everyone you've had. And I'm like, oh, I know that person. Oh, I know that person. So it's so great. You've been having such amazing people on, and the talks have been so incredible. And thank you for getting the word out and sharing and acting as such an ambassador while also just bringing such awareness to everyone and everything. It's so great. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a joy and probably a predetermined life destiny to do it anyway. So, I'm like the planet, the agreements were all, I would go talk and talk to a lot of people. And I feel like I have the privilege of getting that done right here with you and with others. So thank you for coming.
Any questions anyone had, or?
I don't think so. They were taking it in, and there will probably be some as you come back to the video in the next coming weeks. You can come down here and answer questions if you'd like to, because
Sure.
people will usually watch back, so you can definitely check that out. All right, you guys, we are going to get ready to wrap up, but thank you again so much, Michael, for coming. Thank you guys for showing up and taking time. And hopefully we gave you something that was worth the time you took to show up or to watch this at whatever time you do so. We will be back in the Eat and Greet Cyber House this Friday with Victor Oliver, who will be here to talk about dragonic astrology. And oh my God, show up, because that's so cool too. I haven't had anybody over yet where I'm like, you could skip it. Everybody we bring just has something beautiful to bring to the table. So we'll be back on Friday, and we'll be here Friday morning with that particular talk. And look for all the details to connect with Michael in the description box down below. All right, everybody, we'll see you next time. Bye.